Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network.
Hey, welcome back, everybody. It doesn't matter if you're an individual or if you're running a company. The backbone is your financial situation. How is that being handled? Because you could have it all together, have so many connections, business is doing great, but eventually, if you don't have the right kind of financial structure in place, going to come back to bite you. And we're going to work on that today, answer a lot of questions that have probably come up for you and maybe even your colleagues. These two gentlemen help many, and they are the owner and financial consultants at ExperityCPA. I'm talking about Robert Cannon and Jonathan Bander, and they join us today. Hey, guys, how you doing?
Doing great.
Hey, good. Thanks for having us.
Yeah, good to have you here. This is, I have a small business, I'm fully transparent, always dealing financially with situations, whether I should make changes, whether my financial advisor is in Hawaii. He used to be here. So now we have I saw his eyes.
Wow.
So now we have
Mm-hmm.
time difference. He works connected to one of those big companies, and communications, it's all right. But, I always second guess that. But let's say right in, if you're running a business and you don't have a solid structure in place, what should you consider? What type of entity should you be? All of that.
Sure, I'll dive on in. I am Jonathan Bander, CPA, and we deal with this question all the time. So first and foremost, it is, I believe, very important to have an entity in place and a structure in place, and that really is protection and liability wise. It's important to have a structure in place. If you are a sole proprietor, depending on your business, that might be the right choice, but really you have unlimited exposure and unlimited risk. So picking between an LLC, a C Corp, or an S Corp is prudent and good to do. So there's three different structures. You should meet with your tax advisor, figure out which one fits best for you. But from a high level perspective, a C Corp is its own living, breathing entity. It pays its own taxes. Very common if you're going to raise capital and go out and get investor funds or other sorts of financing, a C Corp type entity. Many people, even if they're not familiar with it, may have heard of the term double taxation. That comes with a C Corp. So understanding that, very important. Then on the other side, we have an S Corp and an LLC. An S Corp is an election a C Corp can make for the profits to flow directly through to the shareholder, but it's a bit restrictive, but there's only one layer of tax most all of the time, and it all flows through to the shareholder. An S Corp can only be owned by individuals, cannot be owned by other companies, etc. So one important thing to know, and only a certain amount of shareholders, only up to 100. An LLC is a very flexible vehicle that naturally just passes through the owner, whether it's individual or multi-member. And an LLC can elect to actually be an S Corp or be a C Corp. So I end with it because usually a lot of people push towards an LLC structure because it provides them flexibility down the road if they decide, I want to convert, I want to raise capital, or I would have been better off being an S Corp, and etc. So important to pick an entity.
Sure.
For liability, they all have liability protection, but obviously meeting with your tax advisor and selecting the one that's appropriate for you, best to do.
So let's drill into this a little bit. I have a friend, Mike. He's going through a divorce right now. He's got a LLC where he does a draw. Okay.
Yep.
And it's become challenging because how do you determine his salary for child support and maintenance purposes with the draw when he does his taxes? And I'm, by the way, side note, I am financially illiterate. I'm just going to let you know now.
Yeah.
However, I'm just convinced, he's dealing with this, and we have a friend who's into finance a little bit. And so with the draw, you can't get an accurate read on what the salary is because it's his business, as I understand it, and also his personal all lumped into one tax return. And he's sitting there with money he hasn't even paid out to vendors. That looks like it's his salary. So that being said, would it be more advisable to go into a corporation situation and get a W-2 so we have he would know exactly what his salary is?
That is quite a tricky situation. You are correct that if he's not paying vendors, basically has a credit line or other means
Yeah.
where things are accumulating inside the business liabilities, and meanwhile he's using the revenues that are coming in as either a draw or taking profits, that might not be the true profit of the company. So in a single member LLC, which it sounds like is your friend,
Yeah.
as you mentioned, it's one tax return. The single member LLC gets reported on a person's individual tax return. And that schedule on an individual tax return is really just an income statement. How much income did they earn and what are their expenses? I try to file as many companies as possible on what's called the accrual basis of accounting. Accrual basis. That is when the expense or the income was actually incurred, not with respect to when you actually paid it. That gives you the true financial of your business. So even though his cash flows might be a little wonky when he's borrowing money or taking money or distributing to himself, hopefully on the accrual basis, he can have a true bottom line, understand his bottom line and his obligations. If that isn't the case, I mean, now we're going to boil down to hopefully the attorneys working it out, him presenting his true picture of his operations, what is he profiting, and negotiating it, maybe looking at it over 2 or 3 years to really understand what is he averaging per year. But reporting your single member LLC or your business in general on the accrual basis is the best way to look at a financial and see the true operations of the business and
I appreciate that.
help
And
manage that.
he's been dealing with this for a year now.
Oh
And
boy.
yeah. Final
Yeah.
question on that. How do you make that determination to go to some type of corp? You know, in his situation, anybody's situation, um, would it make more sense for it to be a corporation or try and break it down to an accrual bookkeeping structure?
So you could be accrual basis on any entity, and when companies become a certain size, they have a requirement many times to be on the accrual basis. But you could use the accrual basis of reporting on any entity structure type,
Sure.
whether you are a single member LLC or an S corp or a C corp. Really depends on your personal situation and just what you want to do in business and running it, and if it makes sense for you. An LLC is very, very flexible. You might want to add on a partner or an investor that is a company and you still want pass through treatment. You're allowed to do that under an LLC. You can't do that under an S corp. An S corp can only be individuals.
Gotcha.
Sometimes you don't want the reporting on your personal taxes for whatever reason. A single member LLC is on your personal taxes. You might have a more complex business. You want a separate business filing. So later, if you sell the business, you don't have to hand in your personal tax return. You just want to hand in the business. Might make sense for you to be an S corp.
Awesome.
Yeah.
So let's move over to retirement. Let's say somebody's retiring in 5 years. How do you set that up? How do you plan for it financially? You know, let's assume that you've taken some steps, but you know, now we're in the fourth quarter. So where do we go from there?
Yeah. So what happens in the fourth quarter, things change a lot, right? So let's say you started working at 20 years old and let's say you worked till 60. So you had 40 years of what's called your accumulation phase. So you've been accumulating assets, saving money, putting money in a Roth, putting money in a traditional IRA, putting money in your 401k, and now you saved up a lot of money in that account. And that account, at that point, the money is growing, growing, growing. There's blips in the market. You're okay with it because you have such a long time horizon, 30, 35, 40 years. So you're able to take a lot of volatility in the market, right? Now you're in the fourth quarter. Let's say now you're 60 years old, looking to retire in the next 5 years. That's your conservation phase, a little bit different. So now your asset allocation needs to change. Years ago, you could be in NVIDIA, you could be in these high flying stocks because if it goes up or goes down, it really doesn't matter because you have a long time horizon. Now you have a nest egg. You're about to retire. You don't want that fluctuation of your account at that point. That asset allocation needs to change and need to be a little bit more conservative, right? So now you're looking for distribution to start happening and anticipating taking out money for the rest of your life, not going back to work. So you really need to look at your asset allocation. You need to look at taxes. Also, how is that going to affect you in retirement in the last 5 years? Do you want to move? Do you want to stay here, New York, New Jersey, Connecticut, in that area? Or go in a more tax-friendly state? And you also need to look at IRMA, because at 65, you got to start paying your Part B, Part D, your Medicare. And there's considerations there. If you're taking deferred comp, you could put you up to the next tax band in the IRMA. So there's a lot of considerations in the last 5 years of retirement, but speak to your financial advisor, fiduciary financial advisor, because they usually have your best interest at heart.
Is it reasonable if you're about 5 years away or so? Maybe you're not even sure, but let's say you're low 60s, and it's coming. You're still working. Should you make it a best description soft landing when it comes to your assets and your investments? So, like you say, 30 years ago, you can endure some volatile times, but as you get closer to it, you want to kind of pull back. Would that make sense?
It would make sense. It really depends on how much you have. So let's just say hypothetically, you have $1.5 million saved, and you're like, hey, I want to spend $10,000 a month. And you want to put off Social Security for a little bit, right?
Sure.
You're like, hey, I get an extra $1,000 a month of Social Security if I could put off a few more years. So let me wait and let me maybe work part-time or start taking some distributions from a 401k account or an IRA account. It really depends on your other assets and your plan in the future. The longer you live, right, the best to put off Social Security, because you get a guaranteed 8% from the government after your FRA, full retirement age. So you get a guaranteed 8% plus COLA. So the longer you wait, the more money you get from Social Security. If you do it early, you take a discount, you take a haircut.
It's substantial, isn't it?
Yeah, it's substantial. If you could wait, it really makes it's a big difference.
Like the difference between 62 and 70 is double or more.
Yeah,
It's crazy.
Because you take that haircut in the beginning at 62 until you get to FRA. And then FRA, if you can wait even longer, you get those guarantees from the government. They give you more money. So the longer you wait, the better it is for you. But a lot of times, people are like, hey, I think Social Security is going to go out, or I may die tomorrow. So, obviously, if that's your viewpoint, yes, obviously you take it, when you can. We don't know when we're going to die. That's the reality.
And we hear a lot about Social Security running out. I'm unfamiliar with it in whole, but is it, when you're paid, is it to the end of your life? First question. Second question is, what's your opinion on it potentially running out?
So Social Security is paid out for the rest of your life.
Okay.
My opinion is a little bit different than a lot of other people. I believe what's going to happen is they're going to push it out for certain people. Like, you're going to wait a little bit longer. And I believe there's going to be a haircut. Eventually, people are going to have to take a haircut on their Social Security. Meaning it's not going to, you're not going to receive it anymore, but you may get 10% less or 15% less, something like that. That's my opinion. But when we make plans for people, we account for that. We're very proactive. So we're looking that, hey, guess what? If there's a 10 or 15 or 20% haircut in the Social Security, do we have enough other assets to account for that income gap in retirement?
It's painful, not to get political at all. I don't do that, but painful when you think about it. You work all your life, and everybody before you reap the benefits with no changes. And let's say, further in our lifetime, there could be the haircut, the 10%, whatever it might be. It's like, really? What I did the same thing. I worked just like everybody else.
It's not fair at all.
Yeah.
Really, it's a hard situation. And basically what we do is sit down with people to explain, hey, these are the things that could potentially happen, and healthcare costs and additional taxes. We were promised when we retire, we pay a lower amount in taxes. That may not be the case, right? It's potentially that could change at any point. It's not guaranteed. So there's a lot of moving parts, and you need to account for those moving parts.
Yeah. A couple of guys talking on TV last night makes you wonder.
Exactly.
But anyway, I don't do politics at all. Trusts. Let's go to trust. Let's say that you and your spouse, you have like 10 million in assets. Should you be setting one up?
So it's interesting what's happening in 2026. The current laws are going to sunset. So we're going from, 20 around, let's say approximately $26 million in estate tax down to around 12 to $13 million. So if you have over that threshold, you're going to get taxed approximately 40% over and above that threshold. So you need to be proactive in terms of your estate tax, because you're leaving an issue for your heirs. They're going to have to come up with that money. And a lot of times, if it's real estate or some other asset that's not liquid, they may need to sell to pay that tax. So what we do is we set up trust for clients, like I said, ILET, an irrevocable life insurance trust, and that can help defray those costs for their estate. And there's other things you could do. You could set up like irrevocable trust, whereas outside your estate, we can set up slats, we can set up grats. There's a lot of different techniques we use. But yes, we're very proactive in terms of your asset size. If you're over that specific limit, we're looking at, where you're going to be in 5, 10, 15 years, even if you're not there now, that you can potentially be over that limit.
Let's I'm sorry. Go ahead, Jonathan.
I just want to say, with respect to the last question about retiring in 5 years and this estate tax question, they're both tax questions, and they're both long-term tax questions. So tax planning to understand what are the taxes when you retire and what are the taxes when, God forbid, you pass away are very important to do and put into place. A set it and forget it type plan is really not a plan. When we retire, you might want to move around your assets now in order to have them in maybe a no tax position, a low tax position, not just leave them all in a pre-tax account. Same thing with your assets, which we're discussing now. If you do nothing, your heirs may suffer a large estate tax. So right now you have an opportunity, especially in the next 2 years, before the estate exclusion comes down, to position those assets in a place where they're not subject to estate tax once they pass on to your heirs. But right now, as Rob said, the exclusion to get assets into a form of a trust is around 26 million. In 2 years, beginning of 2026, year and a half, it's coming down to half. You can't get in as much assets as possible. So if you get them in now and then they grow to whatever amount, they're outside your estate and they pass on estate tax free. And estate tax is 40%. So it's a very important legacy tax planning concern that people should have. And now, sooner the better.
That being said, let's say your mom's getting up there in age, pushing 90, somewhere around there. She's doing well, decent health, all good. What can you do? What should you do to protect her assets?
So there's a few different things you could do. Number one, if she's here in New York, you may want to put your assets outside of her name, because if she goes into a nursing home, there's a 5-year look back for that. So that could be a concern because there, as you know, nursing homes are very expensive here. Very, very expensive. So
I live in New York, by the way. So
yeah, you know,
yeah.
yeah, we have offices in New York, New Jersey, Connecticut. So a lot of times, New York is very expensive. So
Yeah.
in New York, if you can afford, the $15,000 a month, a lot of times there's sticker shock there, $15,000 a month. Payment, you need to be proactive now, especially at 90 years old, for sure. I mean, or 90, you need to be very proactive and figure out the assets and what's going to go towards legacy and what's going to go towards healthcare.
I want to pivot over to annuities. For those of us that aren't sure, what is an annuity? That would be my first question. Second, obviously, it provides guaranteed income. What are your thoughts on that? Heard a lot of fees involved. Let's talk about it.
Yeah, there's a lot of different firms out there saying, hey, annuities are bad, right? Obviously, it's a very broad statement, right? That's like saying, hey, eating out is bad. So yeah, you can go to a fast food restaurant or you can go to a great, incredible restaurant. So that it's really difficult to say, hey, all annuities are bad, right? So some annuities are bad. There's a lot of fees and there's zero protection. There's other annuities where there's no fees and a lot of protection. It really depends on what you're looking for. And there's a lot of different annuities. There's multi-year guaranteed annuities, there's variable annuities, there's buffered annuities, there's fixed index annuities, there's fixed annuities, there's single premium. So there's so many different type of annuities. So whenever you hear someone say, hey, annuities are bad, that means they're making money by you putting money in the market, right? And that's how they make their money because they don't want you to go into an annuity. And if you speak to someone and they only want you to do annuities, that means they make money on annuities and they don't want you to go in the market. You really want to work with a fiduciary advisor that can see your situation if an annuity actually makes sense. So let's say you need guaranteed income. Inside of annuity, you can get guaranteed income. That's possible, right? And there's different ways of getting guaranteed income. You can have a rider with guaranteed income, or you could get a SPIA where you put money in and it just pays out a specific amount of money for the rest of your life. If you set up a fixed index annuity, you put your money inside, it basically goes to an insurance company. They give you a contractual guaranteed amount that they'll pay you, just like your retirement, right? If you put money in a retirement, you get a specific amount guaranteed for the rest of your life. So think of the fixed index annuity with that rider, something very similar. So let's say you give $100,000 and they can give you $8,000 guaranteed for the rest of your life. And that rider fee could be anywhere from 0.8 to 1.5 that you pay for that, but that provides you with that contractual guaranteed income for the rest of your life.
We are just about out of time. I have to tell you both. A lot of this is complex. You make it clear and easy to understand where I believe your clients and the rest of us, we don't run away. We listen. So that's very much to your credit. How do we find you? Somebody's got questions, maybe wants to work with you. Best way to reach out.
You can reach us. Our website is ExperityCPA.com, ExperityCPA.com. Our number is 347-535-4999. And my email is Jon at Experity, ExperityCPA.com. And Rob is Rob at ExperityCPA.com. And I appreciate you saying that. Everyone that comes in, all of our clients that get together with us, sit and meet with Robert and myself and talk and make sure everything's understood well. And we're big on education and really helping clients and make sure they understand. That's very important at the heart of both of us. So I appreciate you saying that.
I truly feeling it today. I mean, we hammered through so many different topics in a short period of time. I've been on the phone with a CPA about one topic where I'm like,
Yeah.
Just get to the point.
Yeah.
And, you know, it's, and you guys do, and I appreciate that. Thank you so much for being here, and looking forward next time we get together. There's always lots to talk about when it comes to finance.
Absolutely. We appreciate
Exactly.
that.
Thanks, John.
Thank
Thanks,
you so
Rob.
much.
Thank you. We'll be
Nice
right
to see
back.
you.
Are you looking for even more of the podcasts and hosts that you love? The Podcast Business News Network is proud to announce that you now have even more ways to listen live. Check out the MyTuner Radio, online radio box, and Simple Radio apps on iOS and Android, or find us online. Search for Business News Network on mytuner-radio.com, or search Podcast Business News Network on streama.com and onlineradiobox.com/US. Take your podcast on the go and don't miss a minute of the action.
Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network.
For nearly 2,000 severely injured veterans, everyday life has become filled with barriers.
Day-to-day simple tasks can become pretty daunting.
I have to carry my chair up 2 flights of steps or have somebody do it for me.
What scares me the most is just the falling.
When I'm struggling with my house, I think, to have that one great barrier just knocked down, I mean, it's crucial.
Home for Our Troops is a wonderful nonprofit that builds a
mortgage-free, fully adaptive, handicap-accessible house.
And there's no catch.
It'll be our very first home that we've ever owned. This is a game changer.
This is where your life begins again.
We need you to join us in completing this important mission. Please visit hfotusa.org and help build homes and rebuild lives.
Because of you, everything's going to be okay.